Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Climate Unfiltered, a conversation series by Climate Trends where we explore climate through the stories, experiences, and the people behind it. Instead of starting with jargon, facts, and figures and data, we are starting with conversations because climate is something we all experience in our everyday lives, right? So, joining me today are Ritika and Samridhi, whose work has taken them into different corners of the climate and development space. And we'll begin by getting to know their journeys before diving into our first thematic area of this episode, that would be living through heat. And to just tell you more about Ritika has been working at the intersection of climate education, behavior change, and youth engagement through workshops, learning spaces, and community-led conversations. She focuses on making climate more accessible and helping people connect environmental issues with their everyday lives. And Samriddhi is also connected on a bit of a similar note, but she's a PhD scholar at University of Delhi, and her work focuses on social design, livelihoods, and development practice. Her experience spans research, program management, community-centered initiatives, bringing together design, development, lived realities to better understand how people experience change. And on additional note, she's also a creator and a very popular creator on sustainability and climate. So yeah, and welcome you both on this very first episode of Climate Unfiltered.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Ruby.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ritika. So, Ritika, you've spent years helping people. I think you've been in the space for more than 2 years now, as far as I remember from the conversation in education. And before all that, what first drew you into the climate space? What were your motivations, or was there a igniting movement or a spark that came that said that I should go in this sector?
I think there's always inclination towards environment and sustainability. I lead a zero waste life. I've been doing this for the past 9 years now. Started with using a menstrual cup because I saw the image of this very young boy from an underprivileged background standing in the middle of a landfill holding a used sanitary pad, and that's where my journey in environment and sustainability began, which was a personal journey, right? So it started with moving to a menstrual cup, letting go of plastic wherever I could, being mindful of my consumption, where was my food coming from. So it was a lot of personal battles, challenges that I was sort of working towards. So it was a lot of that journey. And in 2024, late 2023, actually, I had this, I've been an educator for 15 years. I've, worked with teachers, principals, parents, children across country. And I had a very Greta Thunberg sort of a moment, right? Where I was like, what's the point of doing all this if you're not going to have a healthy, livable planet for the next gen? And I absolutely believe in the fact that we've actually borrowed this from our future generations, right? And that's what I wanted to leave behind for them. And that's when I thought that, does this really make sense what I'm doing if they're not even, what's education going to give them alone, right? So I thought maybe I should step away from that, explore what's really happening in the climate, environment, sustainability sector. And that's where I decided to quit my full-time job, start exploring, did a bunch of courses, did a bunch of internships, whatever project I could put my hand on, I did that. Whatever workshop I could design or learn from, I just stepped in and did that. And I think that was, it had been brewing, like I said, for many years. But it was at that point that I felt like, okay, I need to move away and do something more about this more directly rather than just at an individual.
Yeah, so I'd say that it all started from a basic moment of self-reflection, right? As you said in the starting that you were there at the landfill with a used pad and you said that why so much plastic, I feel. And then actually that motivated you. So getting on that similar note with Samriddhi, what was your motivation to come into the climate space? Your work sits at the intersection of research, social design, and development. How did you find yourself asking these questions and actually going out and making content even and talking to more people about it? So, yeah.
So, how I personally started with sustainability is something that I would rather not be able to answer, because if you remember me, Riddhi, in college, at a very young age, I had a very big distaste towards this plastic cups or plastic bottles. I used to carry my own bottle, and whenever I had to purchase a water bottle, I would have rather stayed thirsty for the rest of my way back home. So this was something that I think a principle that I grew up with. I felt like some things are unnecessary in life, and that includes disposables and things that are only there for you for a particular time, and then you dispose it off, and where it is going, do you even have an idea? Where is it going to land? And just reiterating what Ritika had just said, that she saw the image of a landfill, and that was a wakening up call, or something that really brought her to this journey. For me, actually, I remember a very specific case, and my page on Instagram is also called Bland Boba for a very specific reason. It's because I went to a mall someday, and I had this drink, the boba tea, that I was in awe with, because there was this fad going around about boba teas, and I wanted to have it as a young teenager. And when I had it for the first time, I hold the cup in my hand, and first thought that came to my mind was that, why is there so much plastic in this? The cup is plastic, the lid is plastic, the straw is plastic, and you are drinking out of it, and then it is just trash. And talking about the drink inside, it was trash itself, and I had to pay about 300 rupees for it. So I was like, where is this trash, and what are our mindful actions? I was just dreaming of having this boba tea since yesterday. I was even thinking of or dreaming of this in my sleep. And today, when I'm having it, it is just so bland and boring. And that was my thought behind bland boba, that most of our expectations, or most of our, things that we do as Gen Z or younger generation, are just bland in its own taste. And we don't want to be that. We don't want to be a bland boba, and we want to take it forward from there. And the anger behind that boba cup that I had was translated into bland boba. And I think I started my page 3 years ago. And from there, I took it forward. And yeah, so my work there, as you have already mentioned, scales from just day to day activities around sustainable lifestyle, and moving towards actual impact factors of how different things are, or our life choices are actually impacting the nature. And also talking about policy, how policy is actually taking front in India and in global sector. Although as a PhD scholar, my journey is a little bit different in social sector, but I always try to align towards more things that are fruitful for nature and our fast degrading environment. So yeah, that was my motivation.
Yeah, the story behind your motivation is really interesting, like reflecting on a trend that you found on social media, and you said that I would maybe change these trends or make it more about sustainability. So that is really inspiring, I'd say, to just reflect on a cup, and also like Ritika, as you reflected on a pad in the landfill, right? So moving on to the thematic, seeing both of your experiences and climate journeys as well, I would say, and you would also agree that all these elements don't work in silos. Like climate is a very big aspect, and be it waste incineration, be it what you said, our menstruation and how it affects our health, is all related to climate. And also from if I would go to back in school, we learned about it, it is global warming. So right now, global warming is right in the face of us. We have been experiencing immense heat, extreme heat. So going on to that topic, and based on your journeys, how would you say that do the summers feel different to you right now, as in compared to the time that you maybe 10-15 years ago when you were younger maybe? So if you could just reflect on that, that would be really great.
So definitely, heat and summer do feel a little bit different. Talking about how we used to go out during summer vacation, enjoy our day with our friends out, have some ice creams, and it was bearable outside. Nowadays, you will not find kids playing outside during the day. It is very hard, and it is one of the sign that even the heat is different for humans. It is different for animals as well. It's hardly a chance that you will find stray animal outside during the day. And the brunt in urban cities is falling on trees as well. It's not just the heat that is a major challenge. The coupled, vehicular exhaust and the air pollution that is actually combined with the heat in urban spaces in India is a double burden on us, honestly. And it's coming as a huge brunt on the populations as well as the fauna that is there. Talking about the trees as well, the tree cover, though diminishing, there are reports that we keep seeing that they have stopped actually working as the environmental system is working. So there are multiple systems that are collapsing simultaneously, and it is coming together as increased factors and also trickling as felt experiences in our day to day and cultural lifestyle. As a person who has been born, early 2000s or 1998 or something like that, I feel that what my felt experiences of childhood was is not something that my younger brother is experiencing or my niece and nephews are experiencing. So even the cultural values are changing along with these things, and I feel strongly about it. Summers are different, along with the heat is different in our cities today.
Yeah, like as you said that we don't find children playing in the day. It's like early morning is not possible, but like in the evening only we see when like it's a bit cooler. But then that is also becoming a bit difficult because even nighttime temperatures are also increasing. So Ritika, coming on to you, what has your experience been in these late, like in the recent past for heat, and how you've experienced during your lifetime? So if you would like to reflect on that.
So I completely concur with Samridhi said, right? Like, I mean, when we were children, you could be out playing during summer vacations. We'd look forward to that. We'd look forward to the mangoes. We would look forward to being with friends, visiting our grandparents' home, all of that. But I think now that has shifted, and it hasn't just shifted culturally, like Samridhi was sharing, it has shifted because of the weather. And if you ask me about the last 15 years, I've lived, in multiple metro cities. I've lived in, you'd look forward to mangoes more than anything else during that time. Spending time with your grandparents, playing out in the sun, and nobody really cared back then. And I think the temperatures were far more bearable. But if you ask me in the last 15 years specifically, right, which was my adult life rather than my childhood, I think I've lived in some of the, larger cities, tier one cities or metros, Delhi, Bombay, Pune, Bangalore, Hyderabad now. And I've noticed that for all of the cities, especially Pune and Bangalore, we would never need ACs during summer. Yes, it was hot. It wasn't hot. But it was absolutely bearable heat. We would walk back from university, and we could walk at 3 in the afternoon or 12 in the afternoon, and it was absolutely bearable. But at this point in time, that has drastically changed. You can't be without AC even at night, which is very strange, right? Like during the day, I understand it's extremely hot. But in Bangalore and in Pune, when I was studying in those cities, I was working in those cities, you didn't need ACs at night at least, right? Like the weather was really cool and nice. The temperatures would come down. But in recent past, all of the cities that I've been to have required AC, and it's just very strange because that concept didn't exist 15 years back, and that to me personally also means more ACs also means more heat, right? So it's a cycle that we're not able to break away or break apart from. I think that's a huge challenge, and that's what bothers me about the system that and the temperature change that's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And even what I've like found, as you've said, because my aunt's place is in Bangalore, and when I used to go there, I used to feel like, oh my god, this weather is so nice. But then up until last year when I was there, it was so hot, and as in I would love to stroll around Bangalore and like have go to their darshnis and all that. But then like going out in the heat would mean like one of my friends also that I was like going around got a heat stroke there, and she was sick for the next 2 days. She had immense headaches and all that. So reflecting on that also, like has heat affected your health as well, or maybe like your work days as well, if you would like to reflect on that?
Yeah. I think before that, just going back to your earlier question, I'd love to share this really funny story from 25 years back when I was a child. I had a cousin from Bangalore who'd come down to Delhi for the first time. And this was peak summertime, right? Like June, July, at some point during summer break, she'd come to visit us. And I remember we were supposed to go out in the evening, and she wanted to freshen up. And she said, "Can you switch on the geyser?" And I was really zapped because I said, you don't need it here. It's July, the tank in itself is going to be throwing extremely hot water. And she said, "What are you saying?" And I mean, and for me, Bangalore is that memory, right? Like it was so different. And when we were stepping out in the evening, she was like, should I carry a stole or would a jacket do? And I said, neither is required. In fact, I would suggest wear, like light cotton clothes because it is going to be still hot. And today, at 25 years later, it's even worse than that, right? So, yeah, it's unimaginable what the amount of change that has happened. I think to your current question in terms of work, for me personally, if you ask me, has it impacted me? Not too much. I think it's only the energy levels that have gone down. Because I used to stand in schools and schools don't have ACs a lot of times. And you train teachers, you train school principals, or I would be working out of, government halls and stuff. And sometimes they didn't have ACs. But it was absolutely fine, right? It didn't matter during the day. I think the last 2 years specifically, I've noticed that it's exhausting. You tend to, because you're perspiring so much more, you're losing so much more energy. It just impacts you. At the end of the day, when I come back, after 6 to 8 hours of training, I'm absolutely done. Like I have no energy left in my body, even if I've kept myself hydrated and well fed through the day. And I know that it's the temperature that has really impacted me. The heat has really impacted me. But I feel like I still come from, a privileged space where I can choose to take care of things, maybe get like cold water if I wanted to drink and find a way to take care of the heat and, and cool myself down. I think it's people around me that I feel are far more at impact and are more vulnerable to what's really been happening. Right? So, for example, the cook who comes to my house lives in a small place, of course, does not have access to an AC, maybe just a cooler. But how good is that in humid weather either? Right? And she's cooking in like 5 houses and standing in the heat in the kitchen, which of course does not have an AC or even a fan at times. So I feel like people like her are far more impacted, or the delivery person, right? Any of the quick commerce people who are delivering stuff to our homes, I think they are at far more impact than us because we still, like I said, have that choice to find ways of taking care of ourselves and saying no to certain things or finding more comfort in other things and coming back to a home where ultimately we'll have an AC for sure. But they're not going to be going back to those. So I feel real bad that there's just so much of power play and privilege, even in bearing temperature. And that just sometimes shocks.
So I have a similar experience as Riddhi because I'm also in the field job. While I was working for past 2 years before starting my PhD, I had a similar experience, that the field work is getting tougher, not because the job is tough, but either the heat is there and you perspire so much. And also there is this report by ILO or the labor organization at global level that your work productivity actually goes down with each degree rise after a certain point. So that also trickles up. And, there is this specific segment that ILO keeps doing on India because they understand that, work productivity in India during these heat-rich summers is something that is a huge area of discussion and research. So they also bring their annual and periodic reports on this that really point out in the similar direction that work productivity goes down. And it is not just perspiration that is responsible for this. There are a couple of factors, the felt exhaustion that you feel, the mental health that comes in with the increased heat. You feel, dumber at times. I'm so sorry for using that word, but sometimes you feel like your mind is not working when there is too much heat. Then there is chances of heat strokes, the signs of heat strokes that one experiences in field job. And, as rightly Ritika pointed out, there are many vulnerable populations around us. When I was in a field job as a researcher, I had to remind my team to keep a water bottle because there were multiple agitations from their end. And I knew that this is a simple dehydration that is coming from their end. Answers would be like, I was not able to collect this data. It is so tough to collect this data. The questionnaire is so tough. I'm not able to do this. What have you given me, ma'am? So they would blurt out things at me. And I knew that this is just their exhaustion coming out of them. So this was a felt experience at that point that I also had. And it's true that human productivity goes down with increase in heat.
Absolutely. And I really feel that because Ritika was talking about classrooms and then Samridhi went on talking about field, but I really feel that all of these things are part of our built environment, right? And somewhere it is all like the temperatures are of course going high, but then I feel that the built environment is adding to it. Because as you said, the classrooms when I was also in school, we didn't have any ACs and it was comfortable for me. But right now, like when I'm working, I really need to have an AC. Otherwise, I think that I would develop a rash or something. So yeah, like if you want to like reflect on maybe how built environment is like in our cities and in our spaces adding to the already rising temperatures.
Yeah, sure. I think we're not building well. I honestly don't. I mean, and I can give you like a very recent example. I'm working on this project of getting rainwater harvesting done in my society because, I live in Hyderabad and there is like massive water shortages beginning to show up. We've had societies around us calling in water tanks. And when we were doing the survey of the site and checking, what all storage capacity we have and also like where all can the water actually there is clear soil or earth where the water can percolate down, we realized that there was green cover of barely 2% of the 100% of that built environment, right? Which basically meant 2% of soil area. Does it have trees on it? Not necessarily. Does it have large trees? Forget about it, right? It's usually green area is a patch of grass, maybe some small plants and shrubs which look aesthetically pretty, but are they really sufficient for a place where 2,000 people are living? Not at all. And and for me, that was a revelation, not just for me, for a lot of people in the society. When we saw the report, it was a massive revelation that where do we begin? And then I went around looking at, some of the big builders in multiple cities. And I realized that none of their projects seem to think about having a solid green cover, which is like the easiest thing to do. I understand you need concrete for building. I understand you need a certain type of glass. I'm okay with, letting a lot of those things pass. But why do buildings or societies or office spaces not have sufficient green cover? We need a certain number of trees per person for just bare minimum oxygen. And we don't even have those. And it's not tough. Very honestly, if you ask me, is it tough to like build that? No. Does it need planning and strategy? Absolutely. And at execution level, we have to be super careful about. But currently, I don't think anybody is thinking of that. We're thinking of some very basic things to be put into place, right? Maybe we'll think of solar panels to be there or solar water heaters or even rainwater harvesting for that matter has become a mandate in many, many cities. But green cover is not a mandate. And I feel like that's just so sad. And there's just one part of it. And this is for well-built, expensive societies. What about smaller spaces, slums where people are living, right? They don't, it's all makeshift in a lot of cases. And there are many more people stuffed into smaller spaces, which means there is no ventilation at times. The materials that are used for building are asbestos or hard concrete or bricks, right? None of those are heat reflecting materials at all. They're all heat absorbing. They're going to contain that heat. It's going to become difficult for people to be living in those situations. So I feel it's across. And I think the easiest solution is just to figure green spaces, especially in corporate parks. We call it a park, and a park is supposed to be a green place, but it's a concrete place, very unfortunately. We can think of, a lot of different ways. In fact, I recently attended a workshop on how do you design a climate-friendly home. And how do you need to think about the environment and then design? So I was looking at, if I ever had to build a home, what are some things I need to take care of? And very strangely, green architecture does exist in India. It's not expensive. All it needs is the right kind of architect. It needs execution at like a solid level and the person who's purchasing or building that place and investing money to be on board with how it is going to be done. And it is aesthetically beautiful. It's not like it misses out on any of the things that you need. But we're not thinking of that. We're not thinking of the plan and design when we're putting that together. And it honestly is just that much. And there are organizations that are thinking about the vulnerable population as well, right? I can give you an example of Aga Khan. Aga Khan Foundation did a very interesting project in Hyderabad where they went painting, the tops of a lot of these slum homes into white and cutting spaces and making windows, right, for ventilation and putting exhaust and things like that. So that the homes become more breathable, well ventilated in a situation. They can't put in ACs, that's fine, but at least there needs to be air passing through. And they did a project. And while I'm sure it was an expense on their CSR, but it's doable. if like organizations really start thinking, it's absolutely doable to do this for any part of the population, vulnerable, underprivileged, privileged, corporate, whatever it might.
Yeah, absolutely. As in small steps like just painting your roof white can actually, being a social media savvy person, I've seen videos of people actually painting it on their own and then comparing the temperatures inside. So that is live evidence that it does affect your room temperature. And also, talking about how I think this year only so many images were going viral of comparing tree cover area and with the concretized areas, and how there is like such a vast difference in the temperatures. So, Samriddhi, I know we both were talking about your lived experience in terms of where you live in the city in Delhi, and you were talking about a lot of reflections that you have around your space and how it's adding to your heat experience. So, would you like to add on that?
Yeah, so this is an experience of my childhood home. So where I used to live as a child for like 25 years of my life, it was, earlier it was not covered from all sides from buildings, high-rise buildings. It was a row house, but yet other spaces were empty. But yet once they started filling up, I understood that there is some concepts of FAR that were not taken care of, the floor area ratio, as Ritika had also pointed out, the green cover that you have to leave. And for builder houses in Delhi, it is the FAR ratio, that the area that you leave empty and the area that you can cover with the building. So for row houses, it's a specific dimension that you have to leave on both the ends of your house. But the people who constructed the houses after us on the behind of the house, they had covered the whole space. And I keep seeing these videos where, people complain that the AC vent is actually facing them from a neighboring house and how it is increasing the heat in their homes. So it was my experience as well that our neighbor had their AC vent actually in our balcony. They've extended their balcony so much that the AC vent was actually in our balcony and it was oozing out heat in our homes. And then there was no accountability whatsoever. We had complained so many times, and that's why we had to move and, relocate in that area because the heat was so much. It was no longer livable in that particular area. Having said that, the increased population and the way we are developing is something that we need to rework on. Also, talking about aspects like, the kind of materials we are choosing, the green building themselves. I know for sure that the green building would not be adopted by the larger society as of yet. It's a choice that we are making as a society. It's not that we do not have the appropriate measures or things in place or the capacity to build upon it. It is something that we are doing out of choice. Sadly, this is the building reality in urban spaces such as Delhi. Green buildings, if I talk about, the mandates that are given by Griha and other things, they are there, but I also feel that, these policies that come up specifically for urban spaces need to be a little bit updated because the last policies for such as the green guidelines of India have been in 2014 and there have been no updates since. Similarly, the guidelines came back in 2014 that talks about, things like urban spaces, the building codes, and how to take care of green buildings. Although policies like Amrut came after that, that talk about, the green spaces, the parks, and, Delhi and urban spaces like that. And I keep seeing these parks that are built under these schemes and they have a lot of green cover, but, the governance and actual implementation on ground, I feel needs a little more strengthening. And then again, the choices that we make as a society comes in. What are we doing as a society if we are not choosing to build appropriately for our future generations? So that is a question that I always come back to because I have lost a childhood home that was very dear to me. And I would not wish such unfortunate conditions on my future generations. So yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting that you actually had to relocate because of these instances that happened because of the consequences of built environment around you. So, on that note, I would like to come to both of you and ask one example. You did share, Ritika, that you saw that Aga Khan did like a really great project. But apart from that, could you share one more, and Samriddhi, you too, like share one more instance or maybe some step that somebody is taking at which makes you a bit hopeful about that this could actually make my city better, or maybe on an individual level or a community level. So if you could just share one moment.
So, honestly, I do not have such good experiences to talk about in Delhi, but that really brings hope to me. But I would say that, the third space that are the parks in Delhi. And, DDA had taken some steps because although some spaces like, Shahadra or in other places are very dense, they lack parks. But at least my area in Delhi, they have a lot of parks. Each pocket have a park in vicinity, and people can go there. And I see that, at least not for me, because it is very tough for me to take that time to go to that park. But I try that. It is a spot where I find myself after dinner every day. But I see children playing from a balcony. I see older ladies having their yoga sessions. I see people with their animals like dogs and everything, just there in the park. And every time I do that, I feel like, it's a space of conversation and a space of bringing people together so that they also see the importance that somehow is missing in younger generations today. We do not value nature as our grandparents' generation, even our parents' generation are missing that value of, being with the nature, because they do not see nature as something that is important in their life. So I feel that this is one point, the parks in the community and the parks in cities, that I feel brings some hope to populations and people like me. Yeah.
Yeah, parks are really great place of activity. I'd say I love going to, and lately I've seen so many like communities organizing picnics also in the parks. So parks bring like so much
Yeah.
of hope in that sense, and we're able to touch grass actually. So Ritika, what would your like instance or like as in hopeful element be to the conversation? Yeah.
I think there are two. One I have heard of and one I have seen. One is actually in Hyderabad, and I'm hoping to get to visit that place at some point. It's Kana Shantivanam. What they've done is they have actually built a space which considers nature as part of it. So people initially what they did, from what I've read and heard from people, is that they gave off plots to many people and everybody started building their own homes the way they want. But then they centrally decided that that's not what we want. We do want this space to consider nature as part of it. We want to consider the environment when we're building, and we want to do this for the long term for the next generation. So keeping that in mind, they've actually built that space in a very, actual environment friendly. I haven't visited, but I've heard this from a bunch of friends who've been there. So I'm hoping to be there at some point to see this live, right? But for a private organization to come together and put their foot down and say, no, we're not going to allow people to build individual homes, but actually do what's right by nature, what's right by environment, what's right by the next generation. I think that takes a lot of guts. And I think the one example that I've actually seen and made me very hopeful, this was in fact almost 12 years back, the first time I'd seen a home, in fact, a society, which had homes made from bricks with, natural light and ventilation. Very, very minimal amount of even fans and lights required in the house. Everything had, so, and back then, solar paneling was like a very new thing that was just still up and coming. Now it's become very popular. This was basically, I'm forgetting the name of the society. This is on Tumkur Road in Bangalore. And a professor of mine had actually purchased a home. So he'd invited many of us over for lunch one day. And that's when I got to see this. I think it was just very brilliantly done. When we walked in, I realized that there's only one fan in the whole house. And it was made in a way that it didn't need, right? Like the air would pass through so nicely. You could feel the wind. I think now I'm sure with rise in temperatures, it must have changed. But back then I was just taken aback by the fact that there was one fan in the whole house and, maybe like two tube lights. And that's about it. No AC, no cooler, but the place felt cool when we walked in. And there were some 20 of us who had walked into his house, but yet it didn't feel suffocating in any way. And it had natural light everywhere. It had a solar water heater as well. So I think when I saw that place in my mind, now it's etched and I'm like, I'm hoping that someday I'm also able to build something like that in some part of the country, which requires a minimal amount of energy usage, which is built with natural materials and does not require, too much of concrete in any way, and has like a lot of green and open spaces around us. I think those two built environments have really given me a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And like as you said that it was your professor's home, and like home is where like we connect everything, right? I know that like as a person who's been working as in the climate and sustainability space, my dream is also to have a very sustainable home like of my own in the future. And I think that like the way you talked, Ritika, that was your also, I think, because you were so inspired and so like in awe of the home that your professor had. So yeah, I think and Samriddhi, I know because like we were also talking about it, you also have that like hope for the future that we three, maybe and other people like us would like to build those homes. So I think that brings to the end of our conversation. And like if one thing today's conversation reminded me is that heat is not simply about rising temperatures anymore. It's more about our homes, our cities, our environment, the way we work, and how is our day going and it's going to be. So all that is like encompassing the rising temperatures. So on that note, thank you both for sharing your stories, your insights, your perspectives. It has been really enriching, and this is just the beginning of Climate Unfiltered. And we look forward to bringing our audience and our viewers many more stories and perspectives in the episodes ahead. So, thanks to you, Ritika. Thanks to Samriddhi for joining, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.